three of her quotes. There absolutely should be a progressive challenger from the left. I absolutely do not think it should be from the Democratic Party. Another quote, the ABCs of the strategy, that means like the beginning, the 1, 2, 3s. The ABCs, like not step 15, nigga. Step 1, 2 is you do not run as a Democrat. Be clear. Another quote, be clear. The Democratic Party is not the way to go. And then Bree says to Chris, do you agree with Kshama? And Chris says, yes, I agree with Kshama.
And then she tried to spin it as if I was wrong, as if Kshama was agreeing with her in response to me, as if we didn't see this. It's unbelievable the mental gymnastics these people are doing to justify their electoral politics worship. But go ahead, continue, CJ, and I'll continue my point from earlier. Go ahead.
Yeah, we can play
they
a little
asked
bit
Jeff
of
Weaver, Bernie Sanders' former presidential campaign manager, will there be a progressive challenger? And he said,
she's going to ask them point blank. Let's listen in Kshama Sawant's own words what she thinks of this.
New poll numbers came out today showing new lows for Joe Biden. And people are on the left aren't satisfied, I think, at this moment, saying, oh, gosh, Biden's not doing very well. They really want an opportunity to telegraph their discontent that is something other than staying at home, which can be construed as, you just are disaffected. You're just lazy. You're just sitting out. You are giving up your civic responsibility. And to that end, I wonder what you make about some of these options that have been floated as a third party candidate. And do you think there will be, and should be a challenger, a progressive challenger, whether they run on the Democratic Party ticket or as a third party?
They already knew about
Biden
Marianne
in 2024.
We explained that before, but by the way, guys, they already knew about Marianne, and that's why they were desperately trying to get Kshama and Chris Hedges. They've been asked about this time multiple times on multiple shows. Come on, please say it. Please give us the soundbite we need. Please tell us that it's okay to run a progressive primary challenge to Democrats. That's what this question is all about. Let's continue.
Imagine, Nick, if Wolf Blitzer, Nicole Wallace, and Joe Scarborough all decided to go on their show and start stomping for a candidate. How is that not with Crystal Ball, Kyle Kulinski, and Bree? How is that not? How are media figures who are supposed to be independent information tellers, how are they advocating in this manner for a particular candidate when they're getting this much pushback? Like, think about that. Like, they sort of, whether they think the word recruit is too strong, they nudged her. They put ideas in her head. You would be good. And the more they talked to her, maybe they got interested. Kyle completely flipped his opinion on her. If you look at 2 videos, which I posted on Twitter, 2 videos where he's talking about her, and then the 2 videos where he's talking about her after. It's completely switched. But let's listen to what Kshama says as her answer.
Absolutely should be a progressive challenger from the left in a militant campaign. I absolutely don't think it should be from the Democratic Party. And I do want to address the specific names that you brought up. But before doing that, I want to say it's much more about the strategy, the political strategy that we as working people use to bring a real challenge to the Democratic and Republican candidates. And the starting point, the ABCs of that strategy are you don't run as a Democrat. Because look at what they did to Bernie Sanders. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry progressive Democrats supported Bernie in 2020. They were,
She said, look at what they did to Bernie Sanders, but these people pushing Marianne Williamson believes it's going to be different for somehow. That Marianne Williamson has the magic that Bernie did not.
Whether they divided left, because you have the radicals that's not with her, that's us, but you also have the moderates.
Yeah, Bernie not with
Joe
her.
Biden and the establishment Dems. That's another story we're gonna be.
I'll get to that later. Bernie is not even for Marianne Williamson. He said he's supporting Biden 2024. So meanwhile, they upset at us. They upset at us, even though the biggest obstacle to them is not us. Bernie's not even on board. The progressives not on board, but they spend all their time getting upset because some black activists are not on board with Marianne Williamson. But let's continue.
When I went to the Tacoma Dome to speak at Bernie's rally, they were all there with me. I know these people, they don't support Bernie's politics, but they were there because it was so easy. There was nothing at stake to get on the Bernie bandwagon at that time, and yet then go ahead and support Biden once Bernie was crushed, because we all knew that was going to happen. The Democratic Party elite were going to use some trick or another to get Bernie off the books. And then you got James Clyburn, you got South Carolina, and lo and behold, it happened. We didn't know exactly how it would happen, but we knew it would happen. Yep. So the first obligation we have as people on the left,
this part right here, pay close attention. The first obligation we have as people on the left, and then she's going to go into the part I want everybody to hear, as people who are advocating for the working class. Very clear.
We are serious organizers. If you have any loyalty to the working class, is to first be crystal clear about that. Whether it makes you popular or not, be crystal clear. The Democratic Party is not the way to go. And I want to stop there.
I'm going to let it play for another 30 seconds. But this is what's happening to us right now, Nick.
Absolutely.
Whether it makes us popular or not, and we're getting some people, maybe 25% of the reaction is about a pushback. It doesn't make any difference. We can be here standing alone in left media, and it looks like that's where we are, because Humanist Report has now made a video for Marianne over that video with Kareem. Everybody now has jumped on board. When it's victim time, everybody jumped on board. Rational National, everybody has done it. But RBN and Convo Couch, because I saw them, they did some work. Convo Couch and a few of us, we're standing strong. This is like, we're not just gonna fall in line with the PMCs. That's not happening anymore. That was over with the Bernie. We're not falling in line again with Bernie. Bernie fucked that up. And the squad fucked that up by not delivering, by not even fighting. Like JB always says, it's not even that you're losing, it's that you're not even putting up a fight, man. Go ahead, Nick.
Well said. Let's continue this, and I got a point on the Kshama point, but let's continue the last point, and I'll continue.
Absolutely.
Don't want to hear these things that people come up with on the left, where they'll say, well, it's the ballot line, it's a technicality. No, this is no technicality. This is, if you don't run as an independent, you are not taking on the fight that needs to be taken on, which is to present an independent fight back. And if you don't, Bernie was the strongest expression so far of the burning desires that working people have. And I have a lot of appreciation for Bernie, but look what happened. It went nowhere. And so the question really is, can we have an independent challenge? And can we have, through that campaign, the ability to build something? I mean, one of the things that Socialist Alternative had repeatedly called on Bernie to do is, after you were crushed by the Democratic elite, don't just admit defeat, maybe launch a big organization, launch a independent political organization coming out of it. I have no doubt that had he done that, millions would have joined him, and that could have been the starting point of what could have been a political organization for the left. So it has to start somewhere, but it cannot start unless we have the most basic political clarity of what, how do we go about it?
Well, do you agree with that, Professor Hedges? Because there is this argument that says, well, Bernie might not have had as much traction and movement.
That's in an oppositional way. But you're like, I don't know. Do you agree with that, Chris Hedges? Like, you see how she says in a way, like, y'all heard everything you just said, but I don't agree with it.
Like, it's so funny because
this is how I'm seeing it now in hindsight. Like, now that I know that she don't agree with the strategy, she did this head fake in the summer. There's super chat. They're gonna talk about this later. She did this head fake where she was like, I'm done with this shit. Now she all for it again. Now when she's like, at this point, she want Chris Hedges to come in and say, oh yeah, I don't agree, Kshama. I actually do believe we should at least have some presence in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, she wants him. Because she has two intellects right here. And she's bringing these two intellects who are respected by the professional managerial class, but I say they may not acknowledge Kshama, but they do respect her. So she has this. She has one who is vehemently no. She needs this one to be a little more nuanced and a little more softer, and that's what she was. That's what I would think she was hoping in this. But it's funny you make this observation, Nick, because I covered this entire interview months ago before any talk, and I was making the same observation, but I didn't. I didn't understand why she was doing it. And I was like, I thought Bree. It seems like Bree keeps going back to this. I was making the same observation that you're making now, way before I knew about this. So it can't be like I'm, changing. This is like contemporaneous evidence 10 months ago or whenever I covered this. Maybe not 10 months, maybe more like 6 or 7 months ago. But anyway, let's let her ask the question to Chris and hear the answer that he gives.
How do we go about it?
Well, do you agree with that, Professor Hedges? Because there is this argument that says, well, Bernie might not have had as much traction and movement energy and been as exposed to as many people if he hadn't run as a Democrat, if he hadn't been on the debate stage, and that the path might be run as a Democrat, but when they start asking you those questions about will you vote for the eventual nominee, do what all of the corporatists did when Bloomberg got in the race and say, it depends if it's Bernie or not, right? So go ahead and say, no, I won't pledge my allegiance to you. Say what Trump said. No, I won't commit to that right now. And instead go ahead and pursue a third party the way Kshama has just described if you end up being kind of pushed out the way that Bernie was. And
you see how it's an if in the question? Not just that should just be the strategy. So understand from the PMC class, there has to be a hurdle that's covered in order for even to do a dirty break. And guess what? Guess how there would be definitely a disagreement. So even if she said if they do that, do you understand that there will be a different disagreement when it's time?
No.
When it's time? And my bad. Let me let Chris finish. My bad. Chris says it right here. So here it goes.
If you end up being kind of pushed out the way that Bernie was in 2016 and 2020.
No, I agree with Kshama. And in fact, Kshama and I were with Bernie the night before the climate march in New York City. This was back in, what was it, Kshama, 2016, I think.
It was 2014, actually.
14. And Kshama was pushing Bernie to run as an independent. And it was fascinating to me that Bernie responded by saying, I don't want to end up like Ralph Nader.
We have a bunch of left people in office who are PMCs who ain't got that gut shit. They didn't got that, Jenny. I mean, they didn't got that, Nick. They just don't have it in them to be that type of, like, they don't have that. That's the problem. And it's the same issue. It's the same, sort of the same, like, reticence that Bernie Sanders has in critiquing. You notice this, Nick, and I'm about to point this out. You notice how the Bernie Sanders industrial complex is very particular about critiquing Bernie Sanders in the same way that Bernie Sanders is very particular about critiquing Joe Biden. How can we ever get anything done? Go ahead.
Yeah, that's why I asked Marianne Williamson straight up front. Well, I was like, no interpretation. I told her exactly why Bernie's a sellout. I said the Bernie Sanders movement was a massive waste of money, and we should do it again. That's when Marianne was like, I don't agree with that. I don't believe in that. And then later she was like, I'm not trying to apologize for Bernie. I'm like, I didn't ask you to. That was your reflex. My question is, why should we invest money in the Bernie campaign again? You reflectively defended Bernie because you guys are in a cult where you guys have to tiptoe around his massive betrayal. Now, no criticism allowed. And if you're not critical of what Bernie and AOC has done, how am I to be sure you're not going to do what they did? If you have no criticism of Michael Frost, if you had no criticism of Rashid Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, that's you telling me that I think what they're doing okay, and I'm going to follow in their footsteps. Like when the intern said, if you're disappointed with the squad, you're going to be disappointed in me. Right? So I was like, all right, I'm done. Because you have faith. You showed me your hand. And that's what she is doing. Now, to this point, this is why we got to continue hammering this. This is going to continue to waste our resources. And this is what Bree said to me the other day that made me want to really crank up the public discourse on this conversation. And as I did that, CJ, no, they try to intimidate me into silence. Someone even got Bree to go after me, right? Then after this, you saw I doubled down. I was like, nigga, I'm about to make my argument even harder now. Y'all think y'all gonna come after me for being right? And then now it died down. They're like, oh shit, leave that nigga alone, bro. Don't fuck with him on this issue because he know his shit. I know they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to engage with us. They don't want to invite us on. And that panel that you talk about with Vanguard about Marianne Williamson, they did a tweet where they're like, who should we have on our panel? Ton of people tagged me, and they're gonna pretend they didn't see it.
Because they only wanted sort of light pushback people on the panel. They didn't want any radical people sort of stirring it up. Yeah, no.
So this is the point I want to get to again, because I'm not going to rehash this whole thing. I did coverage on this yesterday. But it said Marianne simply chose to run. No, she was recruited. And the public can choose whether to support her or divest from electoral politics altogether. See, this is something that someone says who had no skin in the game. Like, yeah, they can make a decision, but as someone who's advocating for my family, my community, and for the strength of the working class in general, our job is to make the argument for the latter. For what's better for the, you see how they disconnected? Oh, whether they do this thing that works, whether they do that thing that doesn't work, doesn't matter. Because it doesn't matter to them. For me, it does matter.
This may be the contradiction, Nick. This sort of friction, and I'm not saying specifically with Brianna, but with people who want to support Brianna. This is the thing that's draining resources, that's preventing them from doing more radical things that get things done. Like, that's because they are fine. They don't need the things they're advocating for personally. This is why they can sit and wait and just have strategies to eventually get there like it's a game. If you don't need the life preserver to live, you can worry. You can just put it on layaway. You can't put it on layaway if you're drowning in the ocean. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's a different strategy. This is where we have to understand. And I think RBN is here to educate ourselves and re-educate people that our alliance, reformists, they're on specific issues only.
Yes.
We are not on their team as, hey, Kumbaya. That's not what this is. We are not reformists. You can't team up with reformists who want to keep the apparatus that revolutionists want to destroy. That can't be a permanent coalition. We are only coalitioning on specific things. Like force to vote, we're coalitioning on that. Everybody wants force to vote. $15 minimum wage, even though we want it to be $25, $15 is better than what it is now. So yes, that's something we would help with. But this candidate, absolutely not.
Absolutely
she is not
not.
going to be draining any resources.
Like, and they're just shocked because y'all didn't realize that we're not letting it slide. We are adversarial. And I'm gonna explain why here coming up, because this is what they don't understand. Because this is the call for civility from Bree. Many people, despite their disagreements with Marianne, will find value in there being any alternative to the Biden campaign. See, that's the problem. They find value in that. We say there's not only there's no value, if there's a negative effect on the left and the working class. There's a big contradiction that you reformers don't even see. It's not that, oh, you guys are doing your own little project over here, it's okay. No, you guys are siphoning resources and harming our movement by giving the illusion that there's another alternative other than doing the work. So this is my response. And I'm bringing this up for a reason, guys, because it leads to my next big point. Because this is my response that I keep making to these reformists, and they are not retaining. I was literally on Bad Faith podcast and explained to her this very concept, that the reason why we can't support going to the Democratic Party because it will siphon revolutionary energy and resources away from mutual aid, third party, and other actions, right? So whenever I say that, the response I get from these lazy leftists, the people who actually don't want to work, these people say, nuh-uh, that's not going to happen.
Nick, you can't. It's not necessarily the PMC's fault. It's like just how them saying a joke that is about their class we won't get. It is not something that's going to land if you got 10 grand in the bank. 20 grand in the bank, 50 grand in the it's not gonna land. The understanding, what do you mean? There's people on the planet who don't even got $3 to don't. Yes, motherfucker, yes. There's people like that. It is so not something they interact with every day. So that's why it is almost a subconscious pushback because they don't live in that reality. So it's like they have to, the information you're telling me has to combat their reality. So that's why it's sort of a knee jerk, like, what do you mean? Like, no, what if they, whatever you can afford. If there's a working class person that has $3 they can send to you, that $3 should be sent to somebody else who can use it immediately. Like, go ahead.
Yeah, go to the movement in general. Go to the movement. It's just not going to the movement. And to the point, I will make that argument, and the only response they have is, "Nuh-uh, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. I promise I can focus on electoral politics and I can focus on mutual aid at the same time. Nick, we can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time." That's what they always say. Don't you guys get those responses? When we say we can't focus on electoral politics, donate to politicians, it's a waste of resources for mutual aid and other serious actions. Nuh-uh. Come on, let me have my fun, Nick. Me having fun does not distract from the fact that you guys are doing mutual aid and direct action.